All right, now it is time for the top five segment, man. And this week, like Dustin said earlier in the show, it is top five films that redefined the blockbuster movie at the theaters. Man,
Yes.
oh man. I mean, when you think about the word blockbuster and what that means and how many different films are considered blockbusters, it's a lot, man. It's a lot of good movies that not only changed Hollywood as far as revenue, but they also changed cinema overall, right?
Without doubt. Without doubt. As we're speaking right now, I noticed that we have one that's the same. And I'm going to change mine because one just popped into my head that absolutely redefined Blockbuster. So I'm gonna put it on there, and I can't believe I didn't have it on there. But anyway, okay, yeah, you're right. It just seems like what defines game changing have to see tentpole movies that people consider blockbusters, and this is what we're gonna discuss now. And it's interesting because we have some interesting picks. Very very old school, very new, and it's a nice little blend. This is gonna be fun.
Yeah, I completely agree. I completely agree. Well, number five for me goes to the entire Avatar franchise. I felt like I was going to get a little pushback on this one, but I felt like what they were able to do with the technology for the first one definitely elevated everybody else's game when it came to storytelling and filmmaking. And I mean, we've seen what cinema and CGI can be nowadays. And I mean, what they were able to do back when this first film came out. I don't necessarily think the second one lived up to the hype and the technology versatility that the first one did. But I personally still enjoy the story. I honestly like the second one story better than the first one. But I thought what the Avatar franchise did for Hollywood in the entertainment industry was something monumental, that's for sure. And I mean, it's still the highest grossing movie of all time, with a couple different ones that are on our list right behind it. But what James Cameron was able to do is remarkable, even if he's kind of an asshole. But yeah, I thought it was only right that one of us, probably me more than you, put it on my list because, like I said, I mean, I enjoy the films and I think what the technology did for Hollywood was monumental. So yeah, the Avatar franchise.
Well, look, I've got Cameron on my list too with one that also was
It's true.
game-changing technology. Nobody had seen it before what he did in this movie. So he does that. He comes up with game-changing technology and on-screen effects that people haven't seen before he does it. So the only problem I have with him is, yeah, it's the highest-grossing movie of all time because he re-released it 4 fucking times. I just don't
That's
think
true.
re-releases should count towards the initial take. It should be like your
Right.
initial run should be your number, and your re-releases shouldn't count. That's just my opinion. That's what I. All right, my number five is the first. That's right. There was no such thing as a summer blockbuster before this film. This is the first one that was termed blockbuster. It was the first movie to get the coin. A press guy came out, called it that. So game changer. From now on, every movie had to be a blockbuster. I am talking about Jaws. Dun, dun, dun. Changed the fucking game. This movie had people fucking terrified, but it had them in droves going to the theaters to see it. They wouldn't go to the fucking water anymore, but they were going to the theaters to see it. And it had never been done before. No kind of a movie had this type of a phenomenon before where everybody in the country had to see it. Everybody had to go. People were going 2, 3, 4, 5 times. This is the first movie to make that happen. And it's, of course, Spielberg. Of course it is. But Jaws, it is the granddaddy of summer blockbusters. And without Jaws, none of the rest of these films on our list exist. There's no term blockbuster. So congratulations, Steven Spielberg. Congratulations, Jaws. And yeah, I still watch it, man. And it still terrifies me. I'm still nervous to get in the water after it. Fuck.
That's funny. Yeah, I haven't seen it yet, but on my upcoming off days, I'm hoping to finally watch it. I know I still haven't seen it. We've seen the actual shark at the Academy Museum out in LA, but I
That's a
haven't
big
seen the
fucking
actual film.
robot. And no CGI, y'all. They built
Yeah,
this motherfucker and it broke down a ton of times. There was a
yeah,
lot of
a ton
problems
of
on that
times.
set. So, you know what I mean? Jaws gave him a motherfucking nightmare. Even the fake one was giving him nightmares. But yeah, man, it's a great film. I can't wait for you to watch it so we can talk about it.
For sure, for sure. Well, number four for me brought the theaters and blockbusters back to life after a worldwide pandemic.
Mm.
I'm talking about Top Gun Maverick. Definitely one of those sequels that is better than the original, in my opinion, and I feel like a lot of people's opinions. But I feel like what Top Gun Maverick was able to do was able to bring that sense of community back to the theaters for those who were scared to go back after the pandemic. And I mean, it was I because they never really kind of clarified when the end of the pandemic was. So it was like kind of sort of during, but towards the back half, whatever. But still, a lot of people hadn't seen movies in the movie theaters
Yeah.
in more than 2 years until Top Gun Maverick. And I mean, it's so special. It's one of those that has an amazing rewatch value. That's why I like it so much because you can literally flip it on at any point in time. And there's so many different aspects in the film that are brilliant. But what it was able to do for Hollywood and for the theater chain specifically was bring a dead man back to life, basically. So thank you, Tom Cruise. We put one on the board for Scientology. But you know, it's one of those things where you can't not acknowledge the greatness that is Tom Cruise and Top Gun Maverick because it did really I don't want to say save, but it really put Hollywood on its shoulders for that back half of the year. So I had to put it on there. Top Gun Maverick, man.
No, absolutely. And he made it a point of telling the studio it would not happen unless they guaranteed a theatrical release. He said, this movie is made for
Yeah.
the theaters, and it's the only way I'm doing it. And so good for him for sticking to it because it did start the resurgence of what we ended up seeing of what I've got on my list. And so, yeah, yeah. My number four, another game changer, guys. This is, keep in mind, this is before the massive cineplexes, okay? We didn't have 10, 15, 20 screens in a theater. We had max, you had like 4, okay? This movie it came out of the gate. It made more money in its opening weekend than any movie ever. It was the biggest opening weekend, okay? And it had people literally lined up around buildings, blocks long, trying to get in to see it. I'm talking about Batman, 1989, Keaton. It was a massive phenomenon. All across the country, people were in lines, like literally blocks long, or wrapped around the building. Everybody in costume, everybody like, I don't know if it was we were finally going to see The Dark Knight and not campy like the 1960s. I don't know if it was people's fascination with seeing a comedian play the role of a Dark Knight and how would Keaton do. There was so much interest and talk and controversy about it. I think that no doubt led to people going to see it, but then the rewatch value was just massive. This thing was, people were going to see it 4, 5, 6, 7 times, and it was incredible. And like I said, it was the largest opening weekend up to that point ever. And people thought, holy shit, a movie can make this much money in 3 days? Like, whoa. And so yeah, kind of redefined the game again. And it kickstarted, it restarted superhero movies because they kind of died after Superman was like, whoa. But by the time we got Superman 3 and 4, that shit fucking sucked. And people were over it. They're like, we don't really care. We don't, superhero movies suck. We don't want to see them. But Batman launched it again. After Batman, everybody wanted to make fucking superhero movies again. And so you got to credit him for not only like resurging the box office and redefining blockbusters, but basically restarting superhero franchises. So there you go, my number 4, Batman 89.
Nice, nice. That's freaking awesome. Well, another freaking James Cameron one that I mean, have to put on our list because I love Leonardo DiCaprio. Of course, he was big in what's it called? What's Eating Gilbert Grape?
Yep.
But this one right here, I felt like really put him on the map to be that leading man, to be that guy, and it's that near far, wherever you are. I'm king of the world. Hold me, Jack. That's right. Titanic. Yes, that one. I still haven't seen it in its entirety. Seen it so chopped up so many
What?
times, but I've never seen it in its entirety ever, which is crazy because, like I said, Leo, my guy. But yeah, I feel like what Titanic was able to do was kind of pump some life back into the blockbusters in a new way, in the sense of storytelling, where they don't have to be these big, I get historical events, I guess. It brought blockbusters back to historical events. That's what I should say. So to be able to do that, where it's wrapped around this historical event, but then they turn it into a love story, was very interesting. So yeah, number three for me, Titanic.
Look, that movie was the biggest movie of all time, biggest money making movie of all time, and it did it without re-releases at first. He's since re-released it a gazillion times,
Of
but at
course.
first, and please, all of our watchers or listeners out there, correct me if I'm wrong, but if I'm not mistaken, it holds the record for the longest initial box office run. It was in theaters, I felt like, for fucking years. Obviously not years, but it was like it just kept going and going and going. It's like it's still in theaters. It's still in there. It was forever. So correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure it holds the record for the longest initial box office run. And listen, I know I give Cameron a lot of crap and you knock him or whatever, but you have to be a really good fucking filmmaker to have people go see your movie multiple times when you know how it ends. There's
Yeah.
no suspense for Titanic. We all fucking know what happened. But people were still glued to the fucking chairs watching that thing till the very end over and over and over and over. So there's a handful of filmmakers that I know that can do that and make people, and another one's on my list at number one. But another one that got off the top of my mind was Spielberg when he did Lincoln. Is the vote going to pass? Is slavery going to end? You know how it fucking ends, but he had you like wondering, is it going to pass? Oh my God, are they going to
Right.
It's a handful of people that can do it. And Cameron is one of those people. He did it with Titanic. And that's why I'm going to put him on my list at my number three. Because this one did indeed redefine the blockbuster once again with catchy phrases and just all kinds of stuff. Terminator 2, Judgment Day. And again, it took the special effects and the CGI to a whole new fucking level. Whole new level. Now we've got the liquid Terminator, right? Robert Patrick and that badass kind of a thing. I mean, it was just stuff we had never seen before on film. Like, how is he do? This is incredible. What are we looking at right here? It was one of those over-the-top, huge, in-your-face action films with technology you had never seen before, and it was, as Arnold called it back then, the biggest movie of the summer. They kept billing it as the biggest movie of the summer, and it did. It became the biggest movie of the summer, and again, redefined blockbusters. It's like, and it set the bar. Okay, here's where we're at. You got to have this much action, and you got to have this much like special effects, and boom, can you make those special effects? Can you get what I did, kind of a thing? He just redefined how you do it. And everybody since has been trying to up the game with the CGI and making the special effects. And so I give it to him, man. Terminator 2, Judgment Day. It was a badass film.
For sure, for sure. Number two for me goes to 10 years worth of storytelling. 10 years of building up this story with so many beautiful, amazing, badass characters. And what I still say is the peak of the MCU is the Avengers Endgame. This film, I mean, of course, it broke the weekend box office. It, for a period of time, held the highest grossing movie of all time. I mean, what they were able to do is so freaking crazy, man. And I mean, talk about rewatch value. You can rewatch
Yeah,
this 3 hour film so many
yeah,
times. I mean, how many times do you see since this film's release for December 31st at a certain time, you can start it. And then when Iron Man snaps his fingers, that's when it's the next year. People do that every single year. They literally started a tradition
yeah.
where people bring in the new year by watching Avengers Endgame, which I think is so freaking awesome. But I mean, it's still one of my all-time favorite films of all time. It's beautiful, and what they were able to do over that 10 years. Do you remember how many movies were released in that 10 years?
Oh my gosh, if you gave
I
me a
know.
minute, I could count them because I know every one in those phases that led up to Endgame. I know every single one of them. So if you gave me a minute, I could count and tell you. But you're
I
right.
know, right?
You know, and if
It's
they
so
just
crazy.
re-released this for a couple of weeks, it would take number one again. Because it's like right
Right.
there, right? Like just well, fuck it,
Yeah.
why not? Everybody else just re-release Endgame and get back to the number biggest movie of all time. I don't think the record will ever be broken for the biggest opening weekend though. This thing fucking just
No, I don't think so.
set it so fucking high, well over $300 million in its opening weekend. It fucking insane numbers.
350. Yeah.
Yeah, it was
It's like
insane.
352, 351 or something
Yeah,
like
I
that.
don't think that will ever be beat. I think that's a bar that can't be topped. But I'm right there with you, man. And so many iconic moments. I mean, when the hammer comes flying into Cap's hand, and you fucking hell yeah, because he's worthy, motherfucker. And then you hear on your left, and here they all come, and Avengers assemble. I mean, it's a fucking epic. I mean, it's just or Peter saying, "I don't want to die," kind of a, like
Yeah.
in Infinity War, and that whole saga was just. I don't know, man. I'm right there. I get it. Endgame just, whew,
It
whew.
gives me chills just thinking about those
That
moments.
scene, bro.
Like,
I would watch that scene every day, all the time. It's so fucking epic.
right.
Now my number two. Speaking of the 351 whatever fucking $1 million, right? Opening weekend. There's another little superhero film that set the bar. If this is how it redefined summer blockbusters, it is the first film to ever open at $100 million for the opening weekend. First film to ever do it. And if I'm not mistaken, it was like $112 million. Unheard of. No fucking way ever you're going to make $100 million in 3 days. Well, this one did. Spider-Man. OG Spider-Man. Tobey Maguire. Kirsten Dunst. $112 million. Unheard of. Nobody had ever seen a movie like that before, ever. Batman, when I talk about Batman 89, 80 something million. People thought never gonna be done again. Nobody can ever fucking match it. Well, another superhero did. Spider-Man beat it. 100 and something $1 million. 112, $114 million. I mean, and this thing, the momentum that it had to open like that, because unfortunately, guys, they released the first trailer for it. They had to go back and remove the trailer almost immediately because the trailer pictured this image of a helicopter being caught in Spider-Man's web in between the World Trade Towers.
Yeesh.
And then the towers got hit and they came down and they're like, fuck, we can't. And they had to go back and edit out the towers in the film. Not just that scene, but edit out anytime you would see him going through the city. They had to edit out. It was a highly like, oh, fuck, what do we do now kind of a thing. But it didn't stop people from going. It didn't stop people from like the fascination of, and yeah, man, again, like just changed the game. 100 million. And now that's the bar. Let's be honest about it. Spider-Man is the bar because we're never going to get another 300. But now if you don't open at $100 million, you're considered a flop. I mean, if people are opening
Right.
at 60 million, 70 million, you're like, oh, it's a fucking failure. It's a flop. What? Because Spider-Man set that bar. Studios literally think now 100 million or it's not worth it. And I'm just like, that is insane to me. That is insane to me. But there you go. The reason being, my number two, Spider-Man.
Yeah, 114, 114,
Yep, I
almost
knew.
115.
Yep.
That's what it was at. But yeah, I mean, it's super crazy because you're right. It all depends on production budget.
Oh
'Cause
yeah.
that's why they always say horror films are the sure thing because horror films,
Yeah.
if all the the regular people out there don't know, horror films are really cheap to make. All that stuff is super, super easy compared to all the CGI and everything
Yep.
like that. Honorable mention, I do want to put the first Avengers because that's the first one that broke
200
$200 million
million.
dollars.
Yeah.
Yeah, you see a trend. You see a trend. But
Let's just give it to
I
Stan
think
Lee, bro.
literally,
Marvel
like
characters are like
he
100
he
million, 200
redefined it.
million,
Yeah,
300 million. And if it is ever going to be broken, it's going to be a fucking Marvel movie that hits 400 million.
it
Because I
is.
just feel like that's going to be happening. Like,
Exactly, exactly. But I think the success of Spider-Man was huge. But by the time we got to the third one, things were a little rocky,
Yeah.
right? I
Yeah.
mean, compared to what the first two films did, the first two Tobey Maguire films, three was not great. I
No.
mean, let's be honest about it. And I mean, the numbers showed, that's for sure. So people were a little wishy-washy when it came to superhero films. You had a couple of Hulk movies that came out with Edward Norton and the other guy. But I feel like, what people really didn't have a lot of faith in superhero movies anymore. So what? When it comes to 2008, when Iron Man was released by Paramount,
Yep.
that sparked new life in fans to where, okay, we can start believing in superhero movies again. And I feel like that's exactly what happened because Robert Downey Jr., Kevin Feige, and Jon Favreau, they completely reinvented and redefined Blockbuster for the foreseeable future to where we're at now today. Um, but that also leads into your number one. But yeah, I feel like what they were able to do with the first initial Iron Man to have people have faith in superhero movies again was unmatched, undefined. Everyone talks about that movie all the time because it's a classic now. It
Yeah.
really is. It's one of those that people can throw on at any point in time, and it makes you nostalgic and it makes you feel like that you're starting that 10 years over again,
Yeah.
and you can go through that first Infinity Saga, as they like to call it. But yeah, number one for me, Iron Man. I feel like they redefined the blockbuster genre.
Oh, without doubt. And it's so funny because our list is full of like I said, 1978 Superman, right? That's what launched,
Hmm.
like, oh, everybody wants to do superhero movies now. And then it kind of died. Batman 89
Hmm.
resurged it. And then it kind of
Yeah.
died. Spider Man resurged it. And then it kind of died. Iron Man resurged it. So it's funny that they just like every few years, it's like, okay, now we're going to try again and we're going to make these awesome things. But yeah, Iron Man launched, obviously, like, and it will never be matched. Nobody is ever going to match the franchise success of the MCU. It is never going to happen. People have tried ever since and they have failed miserably. Nobody is ever going to be able to duplicate what they were able to do. And if it isn't Favreau demanding that it's Robert Downey Jr., Paramount wanted the golden boy, Tom Cruise. That's their golden boy. That was who they wanted. And Favreau's like, then I'm not your fucking guy. It's Robert Downey Jr. or bust. And it's fucking, and Feige went to bat, and the rest is history, guys. I mean, fuck. But there is a little fade. There is a little, are people getting
There is.
tired? And we're seeing a resurgence now of a genre that did go almost completely away at the box office. People were never going. I sat in so many of these type movies in theaters by myself because nobody would go fucking see them. And then this movie changed the game. This movie brought it back and said, we can make a summer blockbuster that's full dialogue, full drama, no special effects, no fucking anything. It's just people talking, heavy hardcore, and it's going to make $1 billion. And it did. Oppenheimer. Holy shit. Redefined the game because it didn't. I mean, you had the one big explosion. Obviously, everybody knew it was coming. We knew how that was going to go. But other than that, it is a story-driven, dialogue-driven film from start to finish. And it made $1 billion. People were packing out theaters and going to see it more than once, twice, 3 times in conjunction with Barbie. And so,
Hmm.
you got to say it redefined the blockbuster, because this is a whole different type of blockbuster that you just don't picture when you say tentpole film. You don't picture that. You don't picture drama-driven dialogue films. That's just not what you think. And Christopher Nolan said, now you do. I mean, and there you go. That's just the brilliance of his filmmaking and the cast he assembled. John Papsadera, our buddy, should have got an Oscar for that fucking shit. It's just amazing. Oppenheimer, my number one. Redefined, once again, the blockbuster it's just incredible. It's incredible.
Well, it is interesting too, because like, yeah, through going through our list and like divvying up everything, it's like that for every genre, it
It
seems,
is.
right? Like, I mean, Titanic and Oppenheimer, the historical factor,
Right.
but then it does have a dip, and it does come like a half a resurgence,
Yep.
just like superhero movies. That's very interesting. It always comes back around.
Yeah.
That's all, interesting. Like light bulb moment right there.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, guys, what is your favorite blockbuster that you think redefined the movie industry, or what's your favorite blockbuster overall? We want to know. Be sure to comment below in the comment section, and of course, at us on X or Threads. We love the fan interaction. So be sure to do that, man. Great one.
Oh my
Great
gosh,
freaking
such a
top
great
five.
list, man.
All right.